Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party and the vice chair of the New York State Party. With us is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Well, gentlemen, a funny thing happened on the way to the new administration. This Congress is closing down, not a particularly distinguished Congress, neither by the Democrats or the Republicans, but you would think they'd want to get out of town, go home for Christmas and New Year's. You would think that they'd want to start off the new year with the new administration on good stead. But what do they do?
There's more damage to be done.
That's exactly right. The question becomes, how much damage can be done between now and January 20th? And the Biden administration seems have no shortage of ambition to screw things up, to make it more difficult for President Trump as he takes office. Now, a perfect example of this is a so-called continuing resolution, known in the parlance, in the legislative game in Washington as a CR. What does that do? It extends the budget, it cuts a deal for a number of months, and allows the budget to pay for funding of programs. The problem, of course, is that they cut a deal. And what was that deal? It padded the deal, the continuing resolution, which would have been in effect till March, and then it would have to be done again. Instead of going through the regular process of hearings, debates, discussion, negotiation on individual items in the budget, it's just one big grab bag. So what do they put in there? They want to give Social Security to tens of thousands of government workers who never pay into the Social Security Administration, give them a free ride, and they have great pensions. Allow for more COVID-like research in funny labs. They were going to exempt congresspeople retroactively from being investigated and challenged for their bad acts, for example, the January 6th committee. They were doing everything they could to push stuff in their wish lists, more money in the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, more money for Green New Deal programs, all being pushed through, and you had Republicans and the Democrats going along with this. Trump put his foot down. Elon Musk put his foot down. Vance put his foot down. They said, no way they're going to do this. So the question becomes, and I'll start with Jesse on this, but the question becomes, why did the Republicans go along with this? I submit respectfully that when you have a radical group of Republicans who refuse to vote for any kind of budget deal, refuse to vote for any kind of continuing resolution, which forces the leadership of the Republican Party, the Speaker, to go hat in hand and negotiate a deal with the Democrats, you're giving all the leverage to the Democrats. And Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Schumer took advantage of that and padded this bill with all this garbage. Your thoughts, Jesse?
Certainly, you just itemized all the problems that are in this continuing resolution and why the incoming administration was against it and why their designees have been against it. And then they took positive action to stop this. Here's what it comes down to. We are still in the calendar year. We're still in the current Congress. And it's not so much that the members within their own party, every party has their own wings to deal with. Here's the issue. the Democrat-controlled Senate is still having a voice in this issue. And for the longest time, whether I like to admit it or not, they have had the advantage over the Republicans in the House over the last several years, over the last negotiations, many negotiations over continuing resolutions. They had the advantage because of their majority and the White House. Now there's a new sheriff that's about to come into town. And I think at the time of doing things in regular order, the time of doing things with, you know what, let's move forward with a straight CR, move the government forward and move the debt ceiling, what we have to do it to give the incoming administration the ability to govern and the ability to reform as mandated by the American people. To give cover to elected officials for their acts that they may or may not have done, that's almost like the
blanket pardon that Biden is
that we were talking about in
right,
Biden. Now
right.
What we're doing is codifying that in this bad deal. I don't believe that this is a problem with the Republican conservative wing of the House. I think this is a sheer problem that we have a Democratic White House to this day. We have a Democratic majority in the Senate, and they're using their leverage. Is Johnson's hands tied a bit? Absolutely. His hands are tied because a little bit within members of his own party, but because of the people around the table that he's dealing with. The Democrats control 2/3 of this triangle of our government. However, I think it showed moxie, strength, that the Trump administration took its steps, used its delegates and its surrogates to stop this continuing resolution where it started, and told them, get back to basics. Get back to basics. That's what the people of America, no matter what state you're in, a blue state, a red state, a battleground state, all voted for. They voted for this, to going back to regular order and reshaping and relooking at the way we've been doing things. One of the worst things you can say in government is the reason we're doing this is because that's the way we've always done it. It's time to take new eyes, new looks, and new ways of doing it. Let's look outside the box at going. And that's why I think DOGE is a great idea, because it's going to take a business, entrepreneurial outlook and insight into government operations. So for me, I think the Republicans did the right thing. That will walk away from the table. Consider this dead. The Democrats want to shut down the government partially. They don't want a clean bill. That's fine. And you know what? Some of this other stuff, they're elected officials, and it's a sexy thing about a pay raise for Congress and such as that. Listen, these are public servants. They're ones that should. They're doing an honest work. At least they should be doing an honest work, and that's all. That's all well and good. If you're going to do your pay raise, then put it up, maybe of a clean bill with the pay raise. Don't try and hide it and stick it and everything else. But ultimately, the Democrats went too far. They went too far. They overreached in one last gasp effort. And this effort and the impact of the new administration before it even sits is being felt not only globally, internationally, not only economically, it's being felt in the swamp.
Well said, Jesse. Eric.
Yeah, well, I don't know that it's fair to say that the American people voted for regular order. I don't think most Americans know what regular order is. I will agree that most Americans voted to secure the border, voted to bring down inflation, voted for a strong America, rebuild the military, and deregulation, do away DEI. I agree that those were specific points that Trump ran on, and they voted for. So to say that they voted for regular order, I understand what you're saying conceptually. I just don't think people understand necessarily what regular order is.
Well, but they didn't vote to pack a budget bill with every wish list from the crazy left.
Well, I agree with that. But as Jesse correctly points out.
Let me just interrupt for a moment. I do think what they voted for, and Eric, you're right. But all of that is what I took into as being regular order, doing the things, the fundamental obligations and responsibilities of this government, not this type of, pork-filled resolutions that continuously take money away from projects like securing the border, attracting new jobs, putting more cops on the street, more eliminating DEI, more ICE work, more ICE officers on the street as opposed to more IRS agents. The process, they wanted the swamp to be drained. They want a secure border. They want inflation to go down. Everything you identified, I just encapsulated with that one term of regular order.
Okay, because regular order has a specific meaning when you're passing appropriations bills in the Congress. If your definition of regular order is generally common sense, and
I think
the Trump agenda.
I think Jesse's point's well taken. I think Eric's point's well taken. The key thing is that the Democrats were trying to shovel everything in this on their wish list, and they had to leverage, as Eric and Jesse have pointed out, because the way the power is divided, you have a very low majority in the House controlled by the Republicans. You have a group that will never vote for raising the debt ceiling or a continuing resolution. They're on record for saying that. So that undermines the authority of a Republican speaker. Then you add to that a Senate Majority Leader who wants to put everything in his wish list, and you have a White House that wants to do that, and that's why we have this crisis.
Right. Well, let's remember Speaker Johnson, of whom I am a huge fan. I just think he's a spectacular man and a spectacular leader. Guy with a moral compass that points due north and wants to do and puts the country first. And I think he's just terrific. I mean, we have to keep in mind, I'll be the first one to criticize Chuck Schumer. There's a man with no moral compass and who only cares about himself. That's the only issue that drives him is what's good for me, Chuck Schumer. But because the Republicans only, right now, it's going to change in January, but right now, because Republicans only control one half of Congress by a very small majority, there's only so much they can do. So if there is no budget passed, if there's no continuing resolution, regardless of how you want to define it and regardless of what the terms are, government will be shut down.
What does that mean, though? What does that really mean?
That's an important point. It's not like Social Security checks are not going to go out. They will. But there are certain portions of government that will not function. And, of course, there's just the political concept of government is shut down. And who will get blamed for that? History tells us that the Republicans, who control one half of the Congress, will be blamed for that. And the Congress, and it's going to be shut down from Friday, I think is the deadline, through January 20th when Trump takes control of the White House. The Senate, I think, is seated on January. Congress is seated, I believe, on January 3rd. On the 3rd. All right, so by January 3rd, it'll be all Republican. But Joe Biden will still be the president, we think, or he thinks, or may not think. But he'll still be the president, at least in name. So they're going to get nothing accomplished. But precisely because, and Richard, you pointed this out, there is a wing of the Republican Party that insists on utter perfection. You must agree with us on absolutely everything we want, or you're a rhino. You must agree with us on everything we want, or we're going to primary you. I mean, that's not the art of the deal. That's not how things are done. You have to compromise. Now, granted, this piece of legislation stinks. It really is a horrible piece of legislation. But we have to, the question posed is, what's worse, passing that or closing the government? And if you close the government, how impactful will it be? How much will Republicans be blamed for shutting down the government? And with such a small majority, and of course we're already looking at 2026. Can the Republicans hold the House? These are all the factors that you look at. It may or may not be the right decision, but I think we have to at least pose the issues. Better to close it down or better to have that deal? Well,
in that regard, let's point out a couple of things. Number one, Trump correctly says, you're forcing me to fund programs that I'm against and I want to cut. That's number one. Number two, you're making me pass a budget resolution, a continuing resolution, which includes the raising of the debt ceiling. It's Biden's debt. It's not my debt. So what are you doing to this? And you're adding on to it. So the combination of all these things then leads me to the conclusion, what's the real harm, as Eric has asked? Emergency services, real services, will not be cut. Okay? It'll be delayed, maybe delayed in sending some checks out, but Medicare and Social Security will go out. all the emergency services that you need, including disaster relief and the military, will be funded and paid for. And let's not forget, Jesse and Eric, the world we're living in. We have a Democratic administration that thinks it's no big deal that you get a big paycheck from the federal government and you don't have to go to work in an office. You can sit at home. So if you're so inclined to stay home, you'll wait a little bit for your check. You're not even coming to work.
That's fast changing. Joni Ernst, another fabulous legislator, is proposing a bill that will basically take 1/3 of the government bureaucracy out of D.C. and spread it around the rest of the country. Require that all government employees show up for work 5 days a week, and then sell off all the space that the federal government owns and doesn't use. You're going to get a lot of attrition from people that want to just work from home and really don't do anything.
They don't want to show up for Montana, or Wyoming, or North Dakota because they're living in Arlington, Alexandria, and Chevy Chase.
Right, but why the Department of the Interior is in Virginia and not in Montana or Colorado is beyond my comprehension. But one thing that's very interesting about that, if you take that 1/3 of the bureaucracy and you move it out of D.C., most of those people live in Northern Virginia or in Maryland.
Yeah, where do they vote?
They are Democratic voters.
Right.
So if you take them and you ship them out and dilute them in Colorado or Iowa or Utah or Montana or North Dakota, now all of a sudden Virginia isn't so purple. Maybe it's a little more red. Or Maryland isn't so blue. Maybe it's a little more purple. So it actually accomplishes a lot of really good things for Republicans.
Yeah, but the problem, and then I turn this over for Jesse on his thoughts. The problem, of course, is so you have all those federal bureaucrats who don't want to work in an office, but they want to work from home. And they don't even want to be...
Work in quotation marks.
Right, because they don't even want to be checked and verified that they're on their computers working. So they could be anywhere. But the fact of the matter is, that's not a problem for the Biden administration or for Mayorkas. They just open the border a little bit more and bring in a few illegal aliens to compensate for the people you lose out of the federal government. Jesse, final thoughts in this segment.
Final thoughts are, number one, that piece of legislation is amazing by Senator
Joni Ernst.
By Senator Ernst, thank you so much. And I think that's one of the first things that the Doge caucus has already said they're going to do, which is fantastic. Think about that. We spent $8 billion on buildings that we're not using. We spent another $7 billion in energy costs associated with these buildings. You know, what happened to this Green New scam that they had? I don't understand how we live in a day and age where workers, especially government workers that have taxpayer dollars funding their salaries, they don't report 9 to 5 to a building. It astonishes me and such. And you know what? Any government, the state government, local government, like towns and counties, their operations are spread throughout their political jurisdiction. Here in Suffolk County, we have offices all over the county of Suffolk, from the east end to the west end on the border of Nassau County. The state of New York does the same thing. Why should not the presence of the federal government be spread through all four corners of this great nation of ours to serve our constituents?
But even more importantly, why shouldn't government employees work for the money they are paid?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's really the bottom line.
Give me a break. Don't tell me that, you know, it's as much, I forget the exact statistic, Jesse and Eric, but the percentage of federal employees who are not going to work 5 days a week is staggering. I think I read something like 70%.
Yeah, if a private business wants to do that, that's up to them. But you work for the people. You work for the people. Exactly. You got to show up.
And by the way, great examples. One of the first two things that both our district attorney Ray Tierney did when he took office in 2022, and our county executive Ed Romaine did in 2024 when he took office. Right, two Republicans that are elected for the first time in 20 years to their offices. The first thing they ended was the work from home programs. We wanted prosecutors in the office so that we could collaborate. Ed Romaine wanted the staff, and he wanted accountability, and you know what he wanted? He wanted their knowledge and their experiences under the same roof to better serve the people of Suffolk County.
Well, I think that's good public policy. I think it's good economic sense. And the fact of the matter is, part of the problem with the federal government started with Jack Kennedy when he allowed federal workers to unionize. So he gave the power to the federal unions that control this. And the Democrats cut a deal with them. And guess who gets a large percentage of fundraising? Over 95 or 97% of the funds from these federal unions. Guess where it goes? The coffers of the Democratic Party, which reestablishes their ability to get reelected. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a few moments with more interesting and important conversation.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, gentlemen, I want to raise three other issues with you in this segment. I want to talk about the Biden pardons. It's just come, Biden's done these mass, forget about his son, where he gave this blanket preemptive pardon about any crimes you could think of, having been done, not been done, not indicted, not investigated. Just give a blanket pardon, give the kid a free ride. And he's pardoned people who are sexual offenders, people who are grafters, a judge in Pennsylvania from his hometown, so-called hometown in Scranton, who was selling his office and putting poor kids into reformatories, privately run reformatories. He was being paid off for doing this. And a number of those kids
didn't do anything wrong.
And some of them wound up committing suicide or having great psychological damage. That's the kind of people he was pardoning. Some guy, some local executive, stole $52 million from a little town in some state, and being released early. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely reprehensible. But the fact is, 39 pardons to Chinese nationals who were accused or convicted of and serving time on being spies for the Communist Party. And related to that is the fact that the United States magistrate in California released his own recognizance, a Chinese national who was spying, gentlemen, over U.S. military installations and bases in California, let him out his own recognizance. And when they arrested the guy, he was on his way back on a plane to China. They had to grab him. So what's the chance that they're going to be able to hold on to this guy in the jurisdiction of the federal court, California? What was this woman thinking about? Eric, your thoughts?
Well, the pardon power it's plenary. I mean, it's just it's limitless. As this Constitution is drafted, so Biden clearly has the power to do this. I mean, part of the problem is we don't really know what Biden thinks because Biden doesn't know what Biden thinks.
That's just, as we say in our business. I think Biden thinking is assuming facts, not evidence.
Exactly. The more and more we learn about the latter years of the Biden administration, the more we learn that Biden's been absent for quite some time. He's been non-compos mentis at moments. By the way, there's recent revelations on this. Jesse, in today's Wall Street Journal, there's
in
a very
2021. It goes back as early in the administration as 2021, which raises the question, what did Harris know and how did she cover it up?
Well, not just Harris. I mean, you have his entire team. The entire team was aware of what was going on. I mean, we were being told that the guy was turning cartwheels and benching 300 pounds and was the most inquisitive guy, but always behind closed doors that nobody can see. But these pardons just feed into this notion that Biden doesn't know what he's doing because they're just so outrageous. You talk about these 39 Chinese nationals. I guarantee you, whether you agree with it or not, Donald Trump is going to pardon a very significant portion of the January 6th rioters. I happen to think that that for those people that went in there and did not commit any violence and just kind of caught up in the moment,
mere trespass.
I can certainly live with the pardons of those people. But anyone who's assaulted a police officer or a law enforcement officer, I don't agree with any pardons for them. However, if he does indeed pardon them, the Democrats have no moral basis to be able to say that Trump is doing anything outrageous. How are those people any worse than 39 Chinese spies that Joe Biden is pardoning? A judge that's literally, it's almost like a slave trade, selling a child to a home, in exchange for money. So there's a complete moral bankruptcy to all these pardons, and the Democrats have now Biden has completely removed from Trump any cloud over any pardon that he makes, because what Biden has done is just so outrageous.
1,500 in one day.
That's a record.
Yeah, 1,500. What's the ability of somebody to make an informed judgment? Look at the file.
Well, he can't. I mean, he can't. But what it really gets down to is, and I think this is the most frightening question: who's been running the country for 3 years? We don't know, because it's clearly not Joe Biden.
Eric, your thoughts?
Jesse.
I'm sorry, Jesse, your thoughts?
We started out with pardons and spies, and then Eric really, not burying the lead, but really putting the lead forward, said, who's running the country? And I think that if you could ask any 5 people on the street who's running the country, you're going to get 5 different answers. And those probably, if not, most of those answers are going to be a dumbfounded look. I don't think anybody knows who's running the country. Certainly, there is a political wing of the Biden family or the Biden operation that is running this country, and that is not good. They're doing it for the preservation of a legacy, and I think even more sinister, I think they're doing it as a preservation to prevent any of the nefarious acts or deals that they have been cutting over his career to come to fruition. But if anything has been shown to us is that the truth does come out, just like all the truth is coming out of that special that select committee appointed by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, on the J6 incidents and such. All the information that would have cleared some of these individuals or shed better light on this. First, let's go to the spies. Number one, anybody who thinks, but probably just shrug your shoulders and you say to yourself, of course he released them. Of course he pardoned them. I mean, this goes right into the narrative and the conspiracy theories of him being controlled by China. And it also demonstrates that maybe there's a lot more truth in that laptop that everyone said was disinformation from Russia than it really is, and has now been proven to be accurate. But I think that what's important here is who the hell is talking and working on 1,500 pardons? I mean, you two gentlemen, respected members of the law, judges, lawyers, prominent in your field. How long has this been in play for 1,500? Either one or two things is happening here. Number one, over the last 2 years, they've been planning this out for this number to come out, and it's going to grow. Or number two, they're not doing the proper review. They are just doing what needs to be done, and the Department of Justice is doing what it's been doing all along under Obama and Biden and Harris, and that's simply being a rubber stamp. Democratic White House.
Well, maybe worse than that. It would not shock me if money's passing hands. It would not shock me.
Absolutely.
For 1,500?
Money has to pass hands, or has already passed hands prior to.
I'm so shocked and outraged by this. It's totally diminished the credibility of this country as a country of law and order and of due process. People are being pardoned who should not be pardoned. People are not being pardoned who are on the wrong side of the political map, and they're being ignored.
Well, they're being prosecuted for
for
crimes that are just made up.
So let me switch gears with you, gentlemen. I want to talk about the new border czar, Tom Homan, who's made common ground with Mayor Adams. He came to New York. He's worked with Mayor Adams, and Mayor Adams wants to work with him to make sure that the people, the immigration services, are cooperated by the local officials, and he made that commitment. In contrast, is the mayor of Chicago, whatever his name is, the one who's the creature of the teachers union, Johnson, out there, and he's saying no cooperation at all. So I will reiterate what I've said before, and Tom Homan has said it before. 18 United States Code, Section 2, aiding and abetting. If you don't cooperate, that's one thing. But if you affirmatively stand in the way and aggressively resist, then you're aiding and abetting. You should be prosecuted and you should be convicted. You should be removed from office. You're violating the United States Constitution, the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, the federal immigration laws. Get out. If you can't do your job and protect and defend the borders of this country against illegal migrants, some of them dangerous and treacherous, drug dealers, cartel members, people who have come in here who are Chinese nationals of military age, the Venezuelan gangs. When Eric and I were walking into the studio today, I showed him an article. The Venezuelan gangs, and a lot of people don't know this, are closely connected to the Iranians. That means any Venezuelan gangs getting in here are agents of Iran, our enemy, who's a threat to us, and who, because of Obama and Biden, may damn well get nuclear weapons, which is a threat to all of us, to Western civilization. What is wrong with these Obama, Biden types that will not protect and defend our borders? Now people say, why are you saying Obama? Why are you saying Obama? He's gone. No, it was his people that populated that White House, that controlled the agenda in the White House. Well, it was Obama's sycophants.
And now that we know that Biden has been absent for at least the last 3 years, those individuals are that much more empowered.
Right.
Somebody has to do it.
So, Jesse, what are your thoughts on this issue?
My thoughts, I think that Mayor Adams, seeing the fact that Democrats in New York State, throughout New York State, and all organizational Democrats have saddled local municipalities and prosecutors, cops, and judges with this ill-fated and failure of cashless bail, and trying to reform it and trying to title it as reform, realize that it's a failure, and he has to deal with it. Also, he has to deal with the fact that his budget is bursting. His budget is underwater because of these acts. And I don't believe I think you can connect the dots. And it's not a conspiracy theory that once Mayor Adams, tried to seek assistance and was critical of the Biden and Harris border policies that flooded New York City and ballooned their budget, busted their budget, that all of a sudden he was under indictment and under investigation. That's a clear example of it. But let's go to Johnson. So now you have a mayor who's running for his political life. He's being denied campaign finance monies, public financing and such. And the one thing he has to do is doing it to the left isn't going to help him. It's not even going to help him in the primary because the people he's running against
you said Johnson?
are left of him.
No.
Mayor
Adams?
Mayor Adams.
Oh, okay.
He's running for this year.
In 2025.
Yeah.
Right. You're right. He's been denied.
Yeah.
He's been denied campaign finance funds. That's
exactly.
Correct. And which by the way cuts him off the knees.
Exactly. But running to the left is not going to help him. So he's got to do one thing. And the one thing that I've seen in this issue is that those minority communities and in urban communities have seen that their resources for youth centers, senior centers, their schools, their parks, their youth groups, their community groups that were funded by the city of New York are no longer getting money because we have illegal migrants getting free housing, free dental, free medical,
the cultural institutions,
exactly,
medical
and
facilities.
There's a reaction to that.
Well, so I mean,
they're losing money.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that these cities, municipalities, and states that pass these sanctuary laws for illegal immigrants are violating federal law. These are contrary to federal law.
Yes,
They're unconstitutional.
There's no such thing as a matter of federal constitutional law as a sanctuary city, county, or state.
Right.
It couldn't be more clear.
Right. Immigration and national security are federal issues. It has sole jurisdiction and it can divide it up as it likes, but the federal government has primacy. And if there's a law that is passed by the federal government, the states cannot supersede it, regardless of what their political view is. So all these sanctuary city laws, all these sanctuary state laws are unconstitutional. I am of the view that the federal government should cut off all funding to sanctuary cities and sanctuary states until they comply with federal law. Period.
It's also my understanding that, at least in the state of New York, a law was not passed to make them make the state the sanctuary state. I believe it was an executive order, and you guys
which makes it even worse.
You're absolutely
you're right.
Absolutely right.
Even worse
because that can be rescinded with a stroke of the pen by Kathy Hochul.
So now look at Mayor Adams. Whatever you like it or not, he's fighting for his political life. Now let's look at the Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. When have we ever seen a mayor of Chicago come within 4 votes of losing a major party vote? His budget, which with only 18 days left before their city government was shut down, was a 27-23 vote in a Democrat-controlled chamber of aldermen. This is the same time that the people of the city of Chicago are storming and speaking at City Hall, saying to end these policies, to actually work with the incoming administration, rid their streets of these illegal migrants, especially and beginning with those with criminal records. I cannot understand any public official who stands up and says, I will not allow an illegal migrant, someone who's already broken the law to get into this country,
and then had a criminal record before, and in many cases, committed a crime here,
and not be removed from their streets. That is subject to a recall. That's subject to impeachment. Not some of this other crap that we've seen in our nation's capital under the Trump years. That's unbelievable, and that's where you see a tale of two cities.
Well, you know that's very interesting. I want to finish up this segment by raising an issue that's of great concern to Eric and to Jesse and to me, which is Fani Willis, totally corrupt local district attorney in Georgia, Atlanta. I guess that's Fulton County.
Yes.
She sends her boyfriend, her lover, to the White House, makes him special counsel. He has no experience to do the job. He goes to the White House, spends 2 days in the White House, meeting with senior White House staff, and then figures out a strategy to try to prosecute the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, on trumped-up racketeering and organized crime statutes. All nonsense. And now she's just been barred by an appellate court in the state of Georgia from proceeding. Not only, as Eric correctly pointed out to us, not only was she barred herself, but her entire office. And this is a woman who just days ago said, I'm appealing the whole matter. I think I still have an absolute right to prosecute Donald Trump.
It was the appellate court that reached this decision. The appellate court reversed the trial court, which found that either she would be disqualified or her boyfriend would be disqualified. Let's just step back just a little bit because there are a couple of facts I think they're important to know. In addition to her boyfriend meeting in the DOJ in D.C.
and the
White House, this is an individual. This is a lawyer who has no experience with RICO or fraud cases. He's a slip and fall guy, and this is her boyfriend. This is her paramour, and he was paid a substantial sum of money to prosecute. And with that money that was paid to him, he took her on very fancy vacations. So she was the beneficiary of the money that was paid to him, and a lawyer who was wholly unqualified to prosecute a case like this. So the trial court found that you can't both prosecute the case because that creates an appearance of an impropriety, so choose. And they ultimately decided that the boyfriend would prosecute it. The Trump team appealed it, and the appellate court found no. There's an appearance of impropriety at a minimum throughout the office. Therefore, the entire office, because she can't appoint, she's disqualified, so she can't appoint anyone. So the entire office is disqualified. as is the boyfriend. So now but the appellate court did not rule that the indictments would go away. The indictments stay in place. But who's going to bring the case? And who's going to appoint the special prosecutor? My understanding is that the governor would be the one to appoint the special prosecutor, and Republican Governor Governor Kemp. I was going to say Jack Kemp, and he's a New Yorker. But Brian Kemp, there's no way, in my estimation, that he's going to appoint an aggressive prosecutor to go after Donald Trump on these charges. This was a crazy case to begin with.
It's all nonsense. All made up.
So I think it is. While it may not be officially dead, the Georgia case is gone.
But I have to close out this segment by saying, let's be very clear. Any prosecution, whether it's a federal prosecution or a local jurisdiction, whether a state or a county or city prosecution of a sitting president of the United States, should not be allowed because it hampers his ability to function as a chief executive of the United States in protecting and defending this country. He should not have that burden of going forward.
That's assuming the case was even legitimate under any circumstance, and this wasn't.
Listen, the Mershon case with Alvin Bragg in New York should have been dismissed. It never should have been brought. Bragg did that for political reasons. He made it up out of whole cloth. It was a nonsense case. Mershon was conflicted. He made contributions to the Democratic Party. His daughter made substantial money in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe, as an operative for the Democratic Party and Democratic candidates. Give me a break. He should have recused himself. It should have been dismissed. It was all out of whole cloth. It was all nonsense. And now, to end this segment, I'll tell you, Mershon just denied the immunity claim to dismiss it, but there are other grounds to dismiss this case as well. So Trump is now going to have hanging over his head a possibility of sentencing at the end of his term of 2029. The whole thing is ridiculous. It's obscene. Bragg and Mershon should be ashamed of themselves, and this case should be gone entirely. And one more time, I want to say that this whole business, they say he's a convicted felon. He is not a convicted felon, because you are not a convicted felon until you are sentenced, and then that entry of judgment on the sentencing. So he may have been convicted by a jury, but he is not a convicted felon. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in a few moments with our final segment of this week's Let the Record Show. Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show. This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, gentlemen, there are these strange drones flying across New York, LaGuardia Airport, Newark Airport, Kennedy Airport, over towns in New Jersey, out west.
Airport in New York.
Yeah, out west. And they're gaslighting the American people. They won't tell us the truth. So they either are incompetent because they don't know who's controlling these drones, or they're hiding it from us. In either event, it's pretty scary stuff to believe that dozens, maybe hundreds of drones are flying around. And by the way, coincidentally, Jesse and Eric, just like those balloons, the spy balloons, they've been going over military bases. What a coincidence that is, right? Yeah. So obviously, when Biden and Mayorkas say, oh, we have nothing to fear, and how would they know? Because they don't know who it's coming from.
Well, they claim to not know.
They claim to not know. Yes. So there are different theories out there. One theory presented by a couple of congressmen, one from Texas, one from New Jersey, is that there's a mothership out there. It's an Iranian mothership, and these drones are controlled by the Iranians. That's one theory. Another theory is that it's really the aliens coming down because they're pissed off about the way we're running the world. I kind of discount that one, so I'll put that on the side. That's War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells. I'll put that aside. It's also, by the way, Jesse and Eric, it's also Independence Day. with one of my favorite actors, Bill Pullman.
It
and
could be good
Jesse
marketing
Smith.
because I think there's a third installment of Independence Day coming out. But
Well, there you go. The first one I really liked. The second one I wasn't so hot about, but the first one I thought was extraordinary. So it's not aliens, I guess. It may or may not be Iran. It seems to me the only people who really have the capability of doing this if it's a foreign national enemy power, the Chinese, maybe the Russians, but Chinese.
Iranian drone technology is cutting edge.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So maybe there is the mothership. Who knows? Okay. So
Remember, it's the Iranians who are selling the drones to Russia to kill Ukrainians.
Okay, so Ukraine. So what does this leave us? It leaves us with a befuddled American people who can't get a straight story. The last theory that I've seen is it's really a secret project of a secret entity within the government of the United States that are testing these drones. My only problem with that theory, Jesse and Eric, is as follows. If you want to test something, why are you testing it over New Jersey and military bases? Why don't you send it out west with you have vast territory like Montana and Wyoming, and nobody ever see it, nobody pay attention to it. So that's a real problem for me about who's responsible. Now, one of the other theories that's related to all this is that they're really testing at night because there are 3 suitcase bombs, and they're testing for radiation to see if there are 3 suitcase bombs that are missing, nuclear weapons are missing, which itself is pretty scary. And if that's the case, then my answer to that problem, Jesse and Eric, is give me the aliens rather than the suitcase bombs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Depends what planet they're from.
Exactly. But well said, Eric. Jesse, your thoughts?
The Biden administration, the federal government, has bundled this from day one. Their lack of clarity or a strategic, clear message to the American people has allowed for this to go on. I don't think it's aliens. If it is, I like you, Your Honor. If it's 3 suitcase bombs, then I
give me the aliens. Give me the aliens.
Exactly. But the thing here is, if it is a secret government operation, why are their lights on? And why are they there? I do think that maybe I don't believe that they are foreign. And this is just me guessing as Jesse from Medford right now, is that they are part of the U.S. government. I do really believe that they're either on a mission or they're being tested. And the American government is right now, the Biden administration is scared, concerned, or got caught with his pants down to execute an operation that was flawed because they left the lights on. It has demonstrated that there's no trust in government right now. There's no trust, even less trust in the Biden administration, because we've never gotten the truth. Just like they tried to sell you that the border was secure and that 21 million illegal migrants did not cross the border.
And inflation was transitory.
And to that point, who's speaking about the drones? Mayorkas, probably the least trustworthy guy in the entire administration. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Admiral Kirby from the National Security Council's spokesperson is delving into word salad that compares almost to Kamala Harris in her interviews.
You know what I always say about Admiral Kirby? Whatever they're paying him for going out there every day is not enough. No, it's not enough.
Exactly not enough.
Not nearly enough.
I don't know. Some of the things he said, I think he's paid too much. But, there are these inconsistent statements. We don't know what they are, so you have nothing to worry about. Well, if you don't know what they are, how do you know? How do you know if we have something to worry about or not? I mean, the thing I find most interesting is the apparent complete lack of interest by the government as to what these things are. They just seem to not care. And what feeds into this, you guys alluded to it, was that Chinese balloon. We saw it take off. We saw it take off from China, sail over the Pacific, come into the American airspace over the Aleutian Islands, cross over Canada, come down the west coast of the United States, and just by serendipity get blown over every military site across the country so it could take pictures, all the way across South Carolina into the Atlantic, and then it was shot down. And then, it was halfway through. Let me just finish. When it was halfway through in Montana, and people were saying, "What is that?" The government was saying, "Well, it's nothing. It's nothing. Nothing to worry about." And then they were just embarrassed and humiliated into
That's why they shot down. Yeah, it wasn't shot down because they were doing their homework and they were protecting the borders. They were pointed out because Citizens, common
But
citizens were sending it out.
But they waited for it to transverse the entire continent. They allow the Chinese to take whatever pictures
But if they hadn't been outed,
Right.
Eric, by a citizen
Yes.
who took the film, they would have ever told you about it.
Right. So now you have all these drones flying over New Jersey, New York, and other parts of the country. Now, I don't doubt for a moment that a lot of them are being misidentified. I don't doubt for a moment many of the commercial airliners. But there's no question that there's a substantial number of them that are drones or unidentified flying objects, whatever the appropriate term is these days. And if the government doesn't know what they are, damn it, find out. How can they not have shot one of them down or captured one and to try and figure this out?
There's an interesting article, gentlemen, in the New York Post, and the article said that the Israelis have the technology to ascertain exactly where these are coming from and where they're going back to. The technology exists, and the Israelis have it. And it was in the Thursday New York Post. So I commend that article to our listeners, because if that's possible, maybe they ought to pick up the phone. The Pentagon ought to pick up the phone to our allies, the Israelis, and say, hey, if you guys have a technology, would you mind doing this for us and let us know what's going on? They could do that. So let me switch gears, Eric and Jesse. I want to start off this conversation by quoting Winston Churchill, the great leader of the free world during World War II. And he famously said, never has so much been owed by so many to so few. And he was talking about the heroic people of the Royal Military.
The UAF,
the
British Air Force.
RAF.
Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain.
That's right. Yeah. And protected against the Nazis' invasion.
Right.
Now, I submit to you both that the civilized world's debt to Israel for its fight against Islamist terrorism is of the same level and dimension. They have, by fighting back against Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, even the Houthis. The Israelis have more against the Houthis than the United States has, even though the Houthis are blockading free navigation and international trade. They have totally disrupted the ability of this so-called Ring of Fire, this Islamist fundamentalism, to move forward. But, and this is a big but, and always remember, it's what comes after the word but that becomes real consequential, is the following question. Who's the beneficiary of Assad going down? Because the Ukrainians were fighting Russia, and because of the fight that Iran was having in protecting itself, Assad was not as protected by the Iranians and the Russians as it historically had been. And Israel was able to ensure that Assad went under. Might not have been his initial plan, but that certainly helped Assad go under. So we've been remedied from that vicious, psychotic, autocratic leader who gassed his own people and had torture chambers in his country. And who's the beneficiary of this? So instead of having the Iranians, who are the Shiites, you now have this resurrected group of people affiliated with ISIS and other Sunni radical crazies, who also want hegemony over the world based on extreme Islamic thought and religion. So you have that group resurrected, and you have Turkey aiding and abetting them. And I raise the following question, which concerns me enormously. If Turkey goes after our allies, meaning the allies, the United States and Israel's ally, the Kurds, what is the United States going to do? That's the first question. And what are the Israelis going to do? And if the Israelis decide to defend the Kurds, as they should, because nobody deserves a country more than the Kurds at this time in history, if they do defend them, that puts them at loggerheads with the Turks, who are members of NATO. So now you have this following Hobson's choice. What does the United States do? You have a NATO ally, but they're no ally at all, the Turks. But You have an Israeli ally who's really an ally, even though they're not a member of NATO. And are the Israelis and the Turks start shooting at each other and protecting the Kurds? I mean, Eric, what do you think about this conundrum?
So just to lay the groundwork for this, is 100% Israel is the primary driver for Assad's departure and the fall of his regime. Ukraine played a substantial part because who were, as you point out, the two protectors of Assad? One was the Russians, and the other was Hezbollah, which is the Iranian terror proxy, although Hezbollah really is Iran. They set them up. They established them. And because Russia became distracted by the war in Ukraine, over 700,000 Russian troops had been killed or wounded. They had to start withdrawing some of their troops from Syria to go fight in Ukraine. So that left Assad exposed. And because Israel took the fight to Hezbollah in Lebanon, the remnants of Hezbollah, or those soldiers in Hezbollah soldiers in Syria, left Syria to go fight Israel in Lebanon.
What's next?
So leaving Assad exposed, and then Assad now has to flee. I've heard he's taken somewhere like $250 million, $300 million, and is now living in an apartment complex, beautiful apartment complex in Moscow. So, but let's remember who made the move to force him out. Al-Jilani is a Turkish puppet. He's an ISIS Al-Qaeda offshoot, and he is now sitting in Damascus. Technically, I guess, trying to rule Syria. He claims he's a misunderstood moderate. That remains to be seen. But this was done with the support of Turkey. The Turks are the big hand behind the move for Jilani to take over Syria, and they have their eyes on taking over Syria. And as you correctly point out, Richard, they're massing troops in Turkey, getting ready to move into parts of Syria. The question is, how far will they push? They view the Kurds, PKK in particular, as terrorists. And they want to now that they see Iran is so weakened, who wanted to be the Shiite hegemon in the Middle East, they now want to substitute themselves as the Sunni hegemon. They want to reestablish the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East, and Turkey has eyes on taking over a great deal of Syria, either militarily or through a proxy, Al-Jilani. And should he move in there, the question is, how far does he go? And does he not just does he attack the Kurds, which he most certainly will. Let's keep in mind that in eastern Syria, there are 900 American forces. My son was one of them in 2018, 2019. We had a mortar platoon there, and he fought side by side with brave Kurdish allies. If Erdogan of Turkey moves into eastern Syria, he may well be engaging American troops. What do we do? I don't know the answer to that. And he's certainly going to be going after the Kurds.
And what about the Christians? You have over 500,000.
You have a lot of minorities in Syria. The Christians.
500 million.
So, but then the question becomes, how far does he push, and does he ultimately want to engage the Israelis? And if he starts threatening Israeli national security, what do the Israelis do? And if the Israelis are forced to retaliate, to your point, Richard, Turkey's a part of NATO. Do they invoke Article 5 and say, we've been attacked by the Israelis, defend us? So where Iran was and the Shiite radicalism was a problem, was a crisis that needed to be destroyed, currently Turkey is a Sunni crisis that needs to be monitored. Because Turkey's not building a nuclear weapon. Turkey does not appear to be, notwithstanding their rhetoric, does not appear to be nearly as aggressive as the Iranians. But the possibility exists. And it's really important for the incoming administration, for the Trump administration, to make it clear to Erdogan what our red lines are in terms of what they can do in Syria. And if they cross them, that there'll be a price to be paid. Because we can't just turn Syria over to the Turks. That poses a threat to Jordan, which borders on Syria's south, poses a threat to Israel, which shares a border with Syria. So we need stability in the region, and the Turks are not providing it.
Well, on that happy note, we're going to have to sign off. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. On behalf of our group, we want to thank you very much for listening. We want to wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a wonderful and healthy and happy holiday season. And we look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show.
Happy, healthy New Year to everyone.
Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show.